Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Edward Barniskis. I'm 74 years old. I enlisted in the Army on May the 8th of 1940. I had come out of the CC camps a month earlier, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and I worked in there as a laborer at $30 a month. $22 of that money went home to my parents. My mom died when I was 5 years old, so it went to my dad. And I was allowed to keep the $8. So I put the 6 months in there. My term was up. I came out looking around trying to get a job. There was no jobs available. They were talking about the draft, or starting the draft at that time. And said, oh, the devil with it. I'll go join the Army. So I went to 2nd and Chestnut Street in Philadelphia. It was the old post office building there, and I enlisted. From there I went to Brooklyn Army Base. From Brooklyn Army Base I stayed one night into Fort Slocum, up in New York, the little island off of, what's the name of that?
New Rochelle.
New Rochelle. And I look on the map and I can't find that island. They call it something else now. They must have a different name for it. And then they stuck us on a troop transport. We went through the Panama Canal on our way to the Philippines. We got to Hawaii, and we got a 4-hour leave, half the ship 4 hours, and then the other half the ship 4 hours. And we went to drop the contingent of Marines off at Guam, and we proceeded to the Philippines. When we got to the Philippines, all I had learned in the Army up to this time was right face, left face, and how to put my uniform on. And they told us, don't get no uniforms from the Army. When you get over to your parent unit, draw the material from the quartermaster, and you'll have tailor-made uniforms by the Filipinos, which is cheaper than paying for the Army, because we were allowed a clothing allowance of $300 in enlistment in them days. And what you saved on your clothes at the end of the enlistment was given to you as discharge pay. So we got there, and we were assigned to the 59th Coast Artillery, the 60th, which is Seacoast Artillery. The 60th Coast Artillery was anti-aircraft artillery, and various other units. Some went to the Infantry Regiment, the 31st Infantry Regiment, which is stationed in Manila, and parts of it up further on into the Philippines. There we got our basic training. They trained us the way they wanted us trained. We got 30 days of training. We were quarantined for 30 days. Couldn't go nowhere. No privileges allowed, no PX privileges or anything like that. And they worked us day and night. And we were pretty tough, so we took it. And they built spear decor in us. They told us we were the best, and we believed it. And it turned out, by God, we were the best. There's none better. So we get our assignments to what unit we're going to, and the first thing you know, they called my name out, and they said, E battery. And I can hear everybody say, oh. I said, Lord, what kind of a battery is this? E battery. You're going to the Rock. I said, what the hell are they talking about? I'm on the Rock. I'm on Cricket Hole. What are they talking about? They said, look out there in the bay. I look out and said, what? You see that little spot? That's where you're going. So, we were assigned to that. We got out there. We could go on leave every weekend. We had little privileges there. And we would leave on a Friday afternoon, because we had to take a battery motor boat from Fort Drum to get to Craiganour to pick up the boat that's going from Craiganour to Manila to get into Manila. And that was like a whole day's trip. And you weren't due back until 10 o'clock Monday morning. So you had to earn these leaves, or you couldn't get them. And our pay was $21 a month in them days. So we got there, and we started training. Now this little rock that I got onto, as we got closer to it, it looked more and more like a ship. And the closer I got, I could see it had cannons on it, it had turrets on it, it had 6-inch guns sticking out the sides, it had 2 3-inch anti-aircraft guns on the top deck, 4 14-inch guns, 2 14-inch guns to a turret. The turrets were 18 inches thick in the front with armored plate, 16 inches on the side, 14 inches in the back, and 6 inches of armor plate on the roof. You could either get in from the back of the turret underneath, or you went inside the fort and came up into the turret itself from the lower and upper handling rooms. There was a partition in each gun that separated one gun from the other gun. In case something happened in one gun, the other gun was still able to function. The 6-inch guns, we had one above the other in casemates. 4 inches of armor plate around a 6-inch gun in the front. We could traverse about 180 degrees on the 6-inch guns. One of the 14-inch guns that we had could traverse completely around, 360 degrees. The other 14-inch turret that we had was 7 foot below the top deck. It could traverse 120 degrees, side to side. Then it would hit the side of the fort. It could go no further. So that would stop it from blowing the turret on the top deck off in case they had to fire backward. Was a safety factor. And we had the two 3-inch anti-aircraft guns. And we used to have, our recreation was volleyball at night. It's the only thing we had. They had a form that they built out of 2x4s and 2x6s and put a big canvas tarp in it, filled it up with seawater, and we would go swimming in there. We couldn't go swimming over the side because it was so deep and the sharks were so plentiful around there. Due to them dumping our trash over after every meal, the sharks got to know the time. They were pulling guard duty out there at 11 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning. And so that's the reason we couldn't go swimming there. And we had movies every night. And we were the only fort out there that had beer call twice a day. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the bugle blew beer call. Everybody had their duties done by then, all ready for retreat almost. You couldn't have a couple of beers until your supper meal came up. And then at 7 o'clock and we would have a movie. And it was the old one reel job. The reel would run down, everybody would run over and buy a couple more cans of beer and wait for the other reels to come on. We kept the... We were Army, and yet we were Navy. We had all naval guns. We had Army rifles, we had Army machine guns and all, but all of our cannon were naval guns, except for the 3-inch anti-aircraft guns. We had to man all of these guns for us to get our $5 a month extra for being an expert artilleryman. We had to qualify on the 14-inch guns, the 6-inch guns, the 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, the 3-inch rapid-fire sea defense gun, plus expert with the rifle. So you know, $5 was a lot of money in those days, and everybody had their nose to the grindstone. I was a young fellow, and I was trying to make myself a rating, stuck my nose to it, worked hard, kept it clean. I got the name of the West Pointer. I made PFC. PFC was the second in command of the squad at the time. So my squad, well, when I said grunt, they were grunting. So that's why I got the name the West Pointer. I didn't tolerate any mistakes. I didn't tolerate anything because if I could do it, you could do it. That's the way I was taught. We had High Commissioner Sayre come to our fort for an inspection. He got up, we was all lined up, and I just made PFC the month before. And he stopped in front of a couple of the privates, and he said, who's the best soldier in the United States Army? One of them says, General MacArthur. Another one mentioned our fort commander, Major Stubbs. Another one mentioned the company commander, Captain Madison. He got in front of me, said, Barniskis, Edward A, 702-4437, sir. 2 months later, I was a corporal. And them days, they give you a nice warrant, all written out in gold lettering and everything. I still got it at home. My pride and joy. I retired from the Army and Army Reserve as a first sergeant for 26 years and 6 months. Broken time. I didn't have off straight time. Reserve time plus regular Army time. And I'm the best in the business. Always will be the best in the business until the day I take my last breath. Whether they believe it or not, that's me. Now, I was down at Fort Dix, and they were giving out our prisoner of war medals. And my organization, Ex-Prisoners of War, we had made up that this will not be a political thing. We will have all military personnel receiving the medals from military personnel. Lo and behold, we're out there. Here comes 3 helicopters coming in. Here comes Saxon. Here comes Bradley. Here comes Lautenberg. What's the guy we got rid of? Florio. We got rid of him. He's not around anymore. He didn't come. And they started walking down the line and giving these medals out and pinning them on. So they got in front of me and 2 other fellows who were from the Corregidor. I said, wait a minute. I said, the captain behind you will pin the medal on me. And Congressman Saxon looked at me, and I said, that's right. It's a military medal. I want a military man to pin it on me. And him and the commander of the American Legion got their heads together, and the captain standing back there. The Saxon turned to the captain and says, pin the medal on his Jim. So we got our way. But that's the way I feel about it. That's the way I am. I told you, they didn't call me the West Pointer for nothing. So any questions you have, I'll try to answer them.
I think
I'm
Sergeant
very
Peters.
much interested in his time as a prisoner of war camp.
Okay. We were on the front line. I was a target on the front line for 5 solid months. I was surrounded by the Japanese. I was the southern front line, my fort. I'm going to pass the book around. You'll all see pictures of it. This little island. It was shaped like a battleship. And then you'll get an idea of what it's like. Now, this little island goes back in history to the Spanish-American War, when Admiral Dewey went over into the Philippines and defeated the Spanish Navy in the Philippines at the Battle of Cavite. They passed at night, past this little island known as El Fraile, which today was known as Fort Drum. It's still there, but it's not in use anymore. It's deserted. All it has is a lighthouse on it, so that tells us ships where the channel is, forward side, and so on. We had no help. We had nothing come in. In them 5 months, the only thing we had come in, we had 2 submarines that I know of. They had one submarine come in with all medical supplies, the second one come in with 30-second mechanical fuses for our anti-aircraft guns. We found out when they started bombing Cavite, we only had the First World War powder train fuses of 21 seconds time of flight, and the Japanese flying in above the bursting range of the artillery shells in that time of flight. So that brought them down to almost 20,000 feet or lower for perfect bombing, and they wiped Cavite out in one day's bombing. When they came over to bomb Corregidor and bomb us, Ordnance had worked day and night shifting these mechanical fuses into our 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, and we burnt some tail feathers. So from then on, they bombed, and when they come in bombing, they never knocked out the water supply on Corregidor. They never knocked out the power storages on Corregidor because they were kept up that high. Yet they covered Corregidor with all them bombs. They bombed us dozens of times, and all through that time that they bombed us, they were kept up so high that they only hit us with 2 500-pound bombs and 1 1,000-pound bomb. It didn't do any damage. Our fort was 20-foot thick reinforced concrete. At night, after they got done shelling us with their 240 millimeter shells, their 105 and their 155 shells, we would get out, patch up the concrete, bend the reinforcement rods back down while we were patching up the concrete, and they would have to fit the next day. We'd be up there traversing our 14-inch guns around, raising the barrels up and down. They would be firing on us. Now, they had the advantage on us because they had high-angle fire, we had rifle fire, straight fire. You remember mortars and howitzers? The difference between a mortar and a howitzer and a 155, the trajectory angle that you could drop your projectiles in on them. Ours, we would either overshoot them or undershoot them because we were more direct fire. Corregidor would once in a while find out where the batteries were that were doing the damage, and they would give us the coordinates. We'd get down in the plotting room, and I'd plot it all out, send the information out, and bingo, 3 or 4 shots and it was gone. On the day of surrender, we never knew that we was going to surrender. We fought till the last minute. They was invading Craigador, and in the book there, it'll give you the information on it. We were firing and firing and firing, and we requested where to fire. We can't see because there's so much smoke and so much dust and everything in the air. And the orders came back from Craigador. See the smoke and see the dust. Anywhere into the smoke and dust, there's so many of them you can't miss them. Now this is talking about their landing barges coming over to Craigador. Now we kept that on up, and then we got orders to surrender, and the colonel called all the senior NCOs into the office, and he said, we had a colonel, Light Colonel Kilpatrick. And gentlemen, he says, we have the ability to hold out. Craigador is going to surrender at 11 o'clock. We've been ordered to surrender. He said, do we want to fight, or do we want to pack it in? Well, we all agreed we wanted to fight. And the colonel says, I held back one thing. He says, we don't have enough water or food. He said, we have the ammunition and whatnot. What do we do now? We said, well, Colonel, it's up to you to make that decision. And that's when he decided we would surrender. Now, when we surrendered, we destroyed everything. The Japanese didn't get one rifle. They didn't get one bayonet. They didn't get one round of small arms ammunition up to 50 caliber. Everything we had was dumped over, disassembled, taken apart, thrown in different directions over the side, gone. Then we drained all our recoil cylinders in our 6-inch guns, our 14-inch guns, our 2 3-inch aircraft guns were blowed off the deck. The 3-inch rapid-fire sea defense gun, that was blowed off the deck with the 240 millimeter 105s. We drained all the recoil cylinder, packed as dummy rounds in and fired with full charges, and the barrels just opened up. The fort was never able to be put back into action by the Japanese in all the time that it was there. And when the Americans came, they didn't notice until after they took the fort back from a small group of Japanese that had this island. The only way they knew the Japanese were on it when they took Craigador and whatnot was a PT boat stopped there to try to get some souvenirs or something. And 3 officers from the PT boat, torpedo boat, went inside the fort, and the Japanese in there gunned them down. And one of them escaped and reported that there were some Japanese on the island. And that's when the Americans came back to take it. But when we surrendered, we went down inside the fort, and we got our best suntan uniforms. That's the khaki uniforms. And we shined our shoes, and we put on our big campaign hats like the state troopers have. That was our uniform. And we got up there just like we were ready for Saturday morning inspection. And then the Japs came aboard, and they seen us there. We were lined up. And then they set up their heavy machine guns and stuck them and loading. And we figured, well, this is it. If they start firing, the only thing we can do is mob them. But that was our way of saying to the Japanese, you might have been defeated. You might have beaten us, but you SOBs haven't defeated us. And we went everywhere we went. Fort Drum was known even in Japan, in Yokohama, Japan, in the shipyards. When I told them I was from Fort Drum, oh, Bucketto Damida. We killed so many Japanese that they all knew it. They separated our unit for 3 weeks. The third day, they kept us working day and night, no water, no food, no nothing. A daylight hats away from us. Filling in a pier that the Army engineers had blew up in a place called Walla in the Philippines. The guys were going mad, wanted to drink of water, jumping down into the edge of the water and trying to get a drink of water. They're going to drink the salt water, they're going to poison themselves and die. So we'd have to go get them and pull them back up. Finally, the second day, the same thing. Give it a 15-minute break every 2 hours. Finally, the colonel got up there, and he went walking up to the Jap private, and he said, I want to see the commander. The Jap private pushed him back with the rifle, and he pushed the Jap private to walk past him, and the Jap private stuck him in the arm with his bayonet. About 10, up came a Japanese officer, a lieutenant, and he beat the hell out of the Jap private. Anyhow, we did get some water. They brought a 50-gallon drum of water. Where they got it from, I don't know, but we all come down with a dysentery. So on the 5th day, they put us in some kind of a little barracks that they had there. It was a shed. We were 240 men and officers. They kept 10 people back on Fort Drum to keep the place operating while the Japanese were there. And one of the officers we had, the lieutenant, he was the turret gun commander. And in the last part of the shelling just before the surrender, one of the shells, I don't know what caliber it was, hit the turret commander's periscope. And it broke it loose and it fell down and hit him in the leg and broke his leg. So they took him and 14 enlisted men, took them off to the side, about a mile away from where we were, the Philippines, and were telling us. They had him dig a pit, dose them with gasoline, and set them on fire. Come to find out, the guy that had us was in charge of us, the Japanese officer, his brother was a colonel that was in the invasion force coming on to Corregidor, and our artillery fire killed him. And they could see this going on. They knew that we did it. So that was their way of retaliation. Then the next night, two of the guys decided they was going to try to take off somewhere, and they never made it. But then we had 16 Marines was assigned to us before the war started. They manned our 250 caliber anti-aircraft machine guns. We had a couple of Air Force people were there. They had no planes. Everybody in the Philippines at that time, regardless of what organization you belonged to, you were infantry. We were our own infantry on Fort Drum. We had to repel borders. They just never came. But I guess that's about as, if anybody has anything to say, or you want me to talk some about the prison camp. Okay. From there, they took us back to Corregidor. From Corregidor, now this is my unit, 240 men and officers that was captured. At the end of the war, there was only 8 of us alive. 232 of our men were murdered. I say murdered by the Japanese. They wouldn't have been dead for any other reason. It was just a deliberate way that they did it to try to get us killed off. They wanted to use up every bit of manpower that we could give them for the least amount of food or comfort that they could give us. No medicine, no nothing. If you got sick, you couldn't work, they cut your rations in half of what you were getting, and your regular rations weren't enough to keep you going. I weighed 90 pounds when I came out of prison camp. I was working 15 days, and I would get 1 day off. And at 1 day off, they finally got good at the end towards the end of the war, and that's when they start giving us the 1 day off. In Yokohama, we lived in the barracks. The weather and the temperature and everything is just about the same as we have here, winter and summer. We got into this barracks. It was a stucco barracks, wire stucco barracks. Had no beds. All you had was a floor, and then you had another floor 18 inches above that, and all the way across, that's where you slept, shoulder to shoulder with everybody else. And then they had a 6'6" above that, another deck, and prisoners slept up there. But there were no such things as bunks or beds. They had 5 little blankets, and we would all pull the blankets together and everything to try to keep warm in the wintertime. And you get guys that got amoebic dysentery, all this kind of stuff, and everybody sleeping under these same blankets. We were one whole, filthy, dirty, rotten, no shaves, no way to take a shave. You had no mess gear, no nothing. We weren't allowed to take a thing with us, just the clothes we had and the shoes. They all wore out, and finally the Japanese gave us some Japanese clothes to wear. We got 3 Red Cross packages in all the time I was in the prison war camp. And I talked to some of the prisoners that was over in Germany, held by the Germans. They were getting a Red Cross package every week. God almighty, Lord, them guys was in heaven in comparison to what I was going through. My pride and joy was I found a ham bone in the slop pile yard here in Yokohama. And I took that thing and put it in my coat pocket and got back to camp and had a little piece of glass from the window pane, and I would shave that thing down every night and get the shavings off and put it on a little bit of rice that I was given and eat it. And oh, that tasted so good. How often I lay there at night and said, I'd give $500 to get in anybody's garbage pail in the United States, knowing how we used to throw away food. And my doctor even says to me, you're heavy, you got to lose weight. And he stopped, oh, wait a minute, Barney, wait a minute. He says, how do you tell the next prisoner of war not to eat? I said, you don't. We got to Cabanatuan. They took 4 more guys from my unit. They said they tried to escape. Now, the first thing they did, they said to us when we got up there, you cannot escape. We know you by your hair, we know you by your eyes, and we know you by your color. You cannot swim 8,000 miles. And they just about pegged it right. So, anyhow, they took these 4 guys, and they beat them up. And that night, they tied them up to posts stuck in the ground. Next morning, they got up, they made them dig a big hole in front of each one of them with 1 step down into it. And I guess about 9 o'clock in the morning, they come out and made them step down into that 1 step, just like you see in the movies. Called the firing squad out, blindfolded them, and shot them. And we was all saying, oh, they ain't going to do it, they ain't going to, and the hell they didn't. Right there in front of our eyes, they did it. Then they turned to us and they said, now you will count off from 1 to 10. And if 1 man of that 10 escapes, the other 9 will be shot. So you know the first words were going around there? Hey, USOB, if you're going to leave, you let me know. I ain't going to get knocked off for nothing. But we had no place to go. We couldn't swim. And they came and took us on this detail. When we got there, we opened this camp up. And they wanted to spring wire around on 4 by 4 by 12 foot length posts to put wire around the camp to put lights on it. And the chap come over and he got me. I was an NCO. He got some guys from different units, some couple Navy guys and whatnot, and let us all out. I was the NCO, so he gives us all a shovel. He gives us all one of these beams to carry. And we carried it, and he walks so far, and he stops, and he says to me, oh, yeah, what do you want? We can't communicate. He talks Japanese, I talk English. He says to me, I know he wants me to dig, so I'm playing dumb. I said, what? So I'm going with the post in the ground. He gets impatient. He takes a shovel from me. He takes 3 shovels full of dirt, throws it on the side, and hands me the shovel. So I said, oh, okay. So I said to the guys, all right, line up, guys. And I take 3 shovels full of dirt and hand it to the next guy, and I step over. He takes 3 shovels full of dirt, and I got knocked to the ground with a rifle butt. But this is the things we would do to try to get even with them. We couldn't get even with them any other way. You cooperated just enough to stay alive. Then they came up with in Japan a deal about cigarettes. If you were a good worker in the shipyard, your Japanese foreman would recommend that you would get a pack of cigarettes at the end of the week. So we were in a camp that had English, American, and Dutch troops. So the first week this went by, the next week it went by, and we started to get a couple more. Third week went by, and there must have been about 24 of them people were getting cigarettes. So being a good old Philadelphia gangster, I got our boys together and said, hey, these sons of bitches are working to keep us here, and we're trying to get out, and our boys are dying trying to get us out. Let's put a stop to this. So that night we had a thing out at the Benjo, that's the toilet. Everybody come in that toilet that got diligent cigarettes, we dumped him in the toilet. And we said, next time we're going to drown you in there. So that stopped the diligent cigarettes. And this is what you had to do to keep surviving. And they did allow us to have church services when they started to give us the 15th day off. They would have a Japanese priest or a Japanese minister come in. And when they had the priest come in, everybody went to communion just to get that little wafer, that little piece of food. Everybody, regardless of what religion they were. And they couldn't understand why everybody was going to church. They said that they were paying us 15 cents a day for a private, 20 cents a day for an NCO, that's a non-commissioned officer, and anybody that had an officer's commission got 25 cents a day. Now, the officers in our camp were not required to work. They stayed in the camp and helped around the camp and did whatever they could. We had to go out and do all the labor and all the hard stuff. But these stoves I was talking about, and this part is the part that gets me. We walked into this camp and they have a big room set up to the side that says PX, Post Exchange. They didn't mean a blame thing, nothing at all. There was never anything in them. We never got no money, we never got no pay. The stoves were here, big pot-belly stoves. They brought in cardboard boxes and we built a fire in each one of them. Boy, we thought this is going to be nice after being at the Cabana for a while and getting from Japan over here. That's the last stove. That's the last stove that fire has seen in 3 years. Every time the Japanese Red Cross would come around, they'd lift the lid up and he'd rub the bottom of the lid with his finger. He'd get a little soot on it from the cardboard boxes were burned in there. So that's good. They got heat. No heat. No heat at all. And then they had bathtubs about the size of this room, 2 of them. 500 troops. If you was in the beginning of the line, you got a clean bath. If you was at the end of the line, you was in a bathtub that had that much scum on it, that much in the bottom, and the lice was ice skating on top of it, having a good time. Just like that advertisement with the beer where the ants are carrying a bottle of beer and they walk up and dump it in the ant hole on the ant hill and then they have the big party. That's what the lice were doing. It got so they'd be biting you and walking all over you. All you know it was one of these jobs to move them a little bit. You had no way to get rid of them. They would lay their eggs in the seams of your clothes. You have to have the steam to steam the eggs to kill them. Then the one guy, he was sick. He couldn't get up. The Japanese camp, the officer, he come in. I fell off the side of the ship and fractured my ankle, a green stick fracture. And he says to the guy, "What are you doing?" The guy said, "I can't go to work. I'm sick." He said, go to work." The guy couldn't move. He took his saber and beat the guy to death in front of me. So I filled out a report, and our people got it, and they got him, and he hung. He hung in Japan. So we did get some satisfaction. At the end of the war, 2 days before the end of the war, 2 or 3 days, they had us in the coal mines. They moved us from Mitsubishi shipyards in Tokyo and Yokohama, Japan. Because they'd burned everything out by then. Our B-29s had burned everything up into the coal mines. And one of the Korean slave laborers told us, he said, "Soon you come back to work no more." He's speaking in Japanese. He says, "Taksan boom," which means a huge explosion. And we couldn't comprehend what it was. This was the first one that went off. On the second one, it went off. We went to work. I was on the night shift at that time. We went to work, got into the coal mine, and the Japanese never got there. They took us there and left us. So they sent us down. We went down to where we were supposed to go, and we just sat down. No Japs came down all night long. We ate a little rice bowl we had. Came time for us to go up. The 2 Jap guards come down and lined us all up, and they counted us off. And then they recounted us. And then they counted us again. Then they had an argument between themselves and counted us the 3rd, 4th time. Finally, they took us up. We got upstairs, up to the top on the ground. And then we walked over to where our barracks was, like 200 yards. And we're looking around, and all the Jap guards that we had, the beat-up artists and everything, nobody was around. The only one was around was new Japanese guards, a new Japanese second lieutenant, and we're looking all over the place. So here comes these 2 Jap privates. They bring a table out. Here comes another Jap private. He brings a chair and sets the chair down. and this Japanese officer steps on the table, and he turns around and he looks at us after we had exercise. You work all night long, then you have to have exercise. And he says in English, "I have a news for you, a beautiful news. Peace has come at last. P-E-A-C-E. Soon you'll go home to your loved ones." Well, we knew we won the war because we could see our planes bombing Japan all the time. There was no doubt in my mind that we weren't going to beat them. We fought them. The only thing surprised me is how they lasted so damn long. I give them 6 months, and then 6 months, and then 6 months more, and then 6 months more. I was beginning to run out of 6 months. And the first American troops I seen, I looked at them guys. Holy mackerel, Nazi stormtroopers. Here they are with their helmets that come down to their ears. Guys are walking around with this little carbine on their shoulder. Another one's got this little thing in his hand. He's talking on the radio. I'm thinking, where the hell these guys come from? They got big high boots that come here. All we have are blue denim fatigues, a regular shoe that came above your ankle, the old English style helmet, and the OD woolen shirt. That was our uniform. And these guys, I'm looking at them in the uniform. I said, what the hell's going on here? So then we heard them talking, it was English, and we realized who they were. And this first whack we seen a woman whack over there. One of the guys, after he found out it was Woman Army Corps, he says to her in Japanese, "Ohio, good morning, you know." She says, yeah, Canton, where you from? Then after that, they deloused it. They separated the guys that was real bad and put them on a hospital ship. And some of the guys that was a little better shape that didn't need immediate treatment but needed it, and they couldn't do it on a hospital ship, they flew them out. And the ones of us that were a little bit better off, they put on a regular troop ship. And we got back to Manila, and we got there when General MacArthur put out orders. He said, "These are my boys, they can do no wrong." And Lord, he should have never said that. About 2 weeks we blew everything. We screwed up every detail that there was. Two of the guys got locked up for getting drunk and disorderly. And they had him in a brig, in the Navy brig. The Navy lieutenant's there. He comes in and he says to the chief petty officer, "What are these guys doing in here?" The guy says, "I don't know." He says, a drunk said mumbling something about Bataan and Craigador. So he walks over and he says to the guys, he says, "Who are you guys? What the hell are you doing in here?" And one of the guys chimes up, "We're Bible Basses from Bataan. No mama, no papa, no Uncle Sam. No sisters, no brothers, no cousins, no nieces. No guns, no Navy, no Air Force, no artillery pieces, and Uncle Sam don't give a good goddamn." Get these guys the hell out of here when MacArthur puts us in here. They took them back to the base. But then it says, you know, we start doing stuff like that, and it got to be too much. They finally had to put the kibosh on us. And it was so nice coming back. But I'll never forget, I still got 232 buddies. You see, our mission was not to win the war. Our mission in the Philippines was to hold and give a country time that the country's politicians have left the country down. They disarmed us in 1919. They're trying to disarm us again right tomorrow. They're cutting back on the military. They're putting us right back in the same goddamn shape that we were in when I was there. You guys come in, you was using broomsticks for rifles. Right? You was using 2x4s for mortars. You was using a truck for a tank. Please don't let this happen again. We're the only ones can stop it. How many more kids have got to go through this? Well, I think that's about enough. I'll take a break.
Oh, thank you.
right, on the first day of surrender, when the Japs came across the fort, came onto Fort Drum, our officer went down to the Sally Port and escorted them up. Now, coming through the Sally Port up into the fort, they had to walk up a ramp. And the ramp was 7 or 8 foot lower at the bottom than it was at the top. This was to keep the water from the typhoon season. It would come through the Sally Port. The Sally Port was open on both sides, the starboard and the port side. And the ocean would flow through it. And then what didn't go through too quick, that 7 to 8 foot difference there, held the water back from coming into the fort itself so it would drain out. And they came in there, and then they had to come up through the 6-inch gun casemates that we had to get on the top deck. And the opening to get on the top deck was 30 inches by 30 inches, more like a submarine, coming up from a submarine. You would come up 8 foot, then you would turn, make a right turn, go 3 or 4 foot, and go into another hallway, and then go 8 foot up again. So the case for that was if there was any shells or hand grenades dropped down in there, it would only explode in that one area, and it wouldn't do any damage to anything. So the Japs came up that way, and then they brought their machine guns and set them all on the deck, and we were, of course, all lined up out there. And they were PO'd at us, like I mentioned before, because they could see every movement we were making. They had us surrounded all that time. They knew we were there, and they hated our guts because they could see the damage we were doing to them. And everything that they'd done or threw at us, we handled, and it didn't seem to affect us, with the exception of blowing the 2 3-inch anti-aircraft guns off the top deck and the 3-inch rapid-fire sea defense gun. They came, and we all thought they was going to shoot us, because they pulled the bolts back and loaded up the heavy machine guns and everything else. And then they talked. What they talked about, I don't know for a while. Then they took us by each rank, by platoons, by each rank, and you went down the steps, down into the 6-inch gun batteries, around and round, and out to the Sally Port, down the Sally Port, and they loaded us on these like Japanese landing barges. And then they took us from there, and it was about a 3-hour ride by water around the point out into China Sea, and to a place in this pier I was telling you about that the engineers had blew up, and we were filling it with concrete. Now, the only thing we were allowed to take was our uniforms and our hat. We had no mess gear, we had nothing. No raincoats, no nothing, or shoes, and that was it. When we got there, they put us to work immediately. Well, our boat broke down on the way over, the boat I was on, and we got delayed for another 3 or 4 hours until they got started up again, and then we got there. So we were the last of our unit to get to this pier. They put us to work with the rest of them, and we were working. They worked us 3 or 4 hours, and then we'd get a 15-minute break. Well, after we had worked for a while, the guys started to nod off. They let us sit down, not lay down, but sit down. And I started to nod off. And next thing I know, whack, I got hit in the back of the head with something. I turned around, it was a Jap guard, hit me with his rifle butt. No sleeping. So then we would watch for the Jap when he'd go. You learned how to sleep sitting up. Or the best you could, you know. Right. And you was expecting a whop, because you knew you were going to get it. And the daylight came, and about 11 o'clock in the afternoon, they got the bright idea they're going to take all our hats away from us. And that's when they took our hats away from us, and the guys started to get affected by the sun and everything else, and they started whacking out. One guy in particular was our bugler, and he was the first one. He dove into the bay. He was talking about drinking and drinking and drinking, and we knew that if he drank that salt water, it was no good for him. So we pulled him back out, and we sat on him. Well, the Japs let that go on for a few minutes, and then they prodded us all, and then finally he got up, he got his senses back again, and they went back to work. And that continued for 3 days, 2 days, with no water, no food, no nothing. And then we got water on the end of the second day. That's when the colonel had the bayonet stuck in his arm. And after the third day, they left us go back into this little barracks we were talking about. Now, there were no latrines, no nothing. And about then, the dysentery and everything starts showing up. And we didn't realize that 50% of them had amoebic dysentery by that time. And no treatment, no nothing. We had nothing. And when you had to go, the cramps hit your stomach so fast and so hard, you didn't even have time to pull your pants down before you mess yourself up. Then you had no place to clean up, no water to clean up, nothing. And there you were, one hell of a mess. I mean, you know, they were breaking us down to the point that they figured we would be animals, nothing better than animals. And I got to give my outfit credit. I mean, it was. And 14 enlistment men that they killed. They were the first ones to die. 2 guys took off the one night. We never heard no more about them, except one of the Jap guards says, "Oh yeah, we caught them and we shot them." But now we don't know if this is true or not. Usually the Filipinos do something. Then they start taking us every day, load us up on Jap trucks in these little towns and little barrios, and they march us through these towns and barrios, showing the Filipinos that we were inferior people. Now, we were messed up. We had crap running down our legs, and everybody with diarrhea. You know, it was one stinking hell of a lousy, rotten mess. But by living with it, you got used to it. You get acclimated to it, like, you know. And one of my buddies, we were walking along, and there's a water spigot over at the corner of one of these fields. It was like a soccer field. And he kind of passed out. As he passed out, I grabbed him, and I headed over towards the water. Well, that was all right. I got him over there, and I turned the spigot on, and I washed him down a little bit with the water. And then the minute I stopped down to get a drink, I got about 3 swallows of water, and poof, I got hit again, you know. And my buddy, he was laying down there, so he was getting some water, too. I figured we accomplished our mission there. So I got a shot in the head. Like I said, the only satisfaction I could get was that I was outfoxing them lousy bastards, in my mind. I was taking a beating doing it now. But I was willing to that beating to say to myself, you're better than these bastards. Like I made a statement in the beginning, you might have beat me, but you haven't defeated me. And the only time I'm going to be defeated is when I'm dead. And I lived on that theory. So after 2 weeks or 3 weeks of that, and moving us all around and stuff like that, they finally brought in some Filipino troops that they had captured on Fort Frank. And that was the closest to the mainland on our side, away from Bataan. We were on the southern side, Bataan was on the northern side. And the west was an open sea, the China Sea facing China, and the east was facing into a base in Manila. And they had intense hatred for us, because no matter what they did, and all the shelling and all the bombing that they did at Fort Drum, they could never put us out of action. We became the artillery park for Cregador and everybody else out there. Now, you got to realize this, we were living inside. We changed from daylight soldiers to nighttime soldiers the day the war started. Let me backtrack a little bit. I was sergeant of the guard on Fort Drum the day that they bombed Pearl Harbor. That was nighttime in the Philippines. It was crossing the international date line, and it was daylight in Pearl Harbor. And sergeant of the guard consisted of me, just one guard personnel on this fort. The radio man up in the tower, the cage mash, he was on duty all the time, and so was I. Everybody else in the fort was asleep. I carried a .45 automatic pistol. We were alerted. We had the ready lockers. I had the key for the ready lockers, the ready locker ammunition. In other words, I was the man. Any orders I got, anything I seen fit, I did to get my company, my battery, up and ready to go. That was my job. Comes hell or high water. So orders came through. This is how the war started, as far as I am, what I lived through. About 2 o'clock in the morning, extinguish all lights except absolutely necessary cooking lights. Well, all our cooking was done inside the fort. We had the barracks on the top deck at the time, the wooden barracks. We dumped them all over the side when the war came. And we turned the running lights out on the cage mast, the red light and the green light, port and starboard. And don't forget now, we were alerted November the 26th. On November the 26th, I attended a smoker against the 31st Infantry Regiment in Manila, in the Walled City. And we took our boxing team from Fort Drum, and we went over and we boxed the infantry. And I was one of the boxers.
What weight class did you box in?
A light heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I fought to a draw. Me and a guy by the name of Lewis, he had 3 brothers in the 31st Infantry with him. And I don't know if they ever survived, but they didn't. But after the fights were over, we were sitting down having a dinner and just getting ready to enjoy ourselves when Shore Patrol come in and said, "All right, all you guys get back to your outfits. We're on alert again." This was about the 10th or 11th time. And I could never understand why Pearl Harbor was never alerted when we got the alert. That was the last alert, and we was on alert all this time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we had all the ready ammunition in the locker for the anti-aircraft guns, the machine guns. Everything was set up there. The machine guns were there, the ammunition was there, everything. All I had to do was knock that lock off or blow it off with the 45, whichever came quicker. It was a corrugated tin barracks, and we'd have been in business. So anyhow, I put this order down. I didn't have to worry because all we turned out was the port and starboard lights. We were just as black as the night is black around us. And we waited a while, and about, I guess it was 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, he comes down with orders he received from Craiganour. Alert all batteries against possible attack. Batteries and companies, this is what it said. So this was a general order was sent out to everybody in the Philippines from MacArthur's headquarters, I assume. Well, I got that, and I said to myself, now, by the time I run up and get the bugler and get him out of bed, and he wakes up and starts to blow our call to, man your battle stations, the hell, I get this broom and just run down this corrugated tin barracks with it, and that'll wake everybody up because it's all one barracks, and I did that. And I run down and, like a kid running down the picket fence with a stick, the noise that makes, and I'm hollering, man your battle stations, man your battle stations. Well, these guys are jumping out, some naked, some just in their shorts, some just in T-shirts, and everybody's hauling ass heading for their battle stations. So it's nighttime. Everybody's going every which direction. At least they're awake. So I head down to the plotting room. I was the chief plotter. And I get down there and I open that thing up and I'm ready and waiting. And then we don't hear nothing. And we don't hear nothing. And we don't hear nothing. And it comes about 6 o'clock in the morning. Then all of a sudden, here comes guys coming down handing out grenades and live ammunition for our rifles. We had the old bolt-action rifles. 30 caliber water-cooled machine guns, 50 caliber water-cooled machine guns. Well, they were on the top deck. Now we got our rifles, we got our ammunition, we got our hand grenades. Next thing, it comes breakfast time. Half the battery is allowed to eat. The other battery half stays on duty at the gun. Now, we're all manning the 14-inch guns now. In peacetime, we only had enough of a crew to man one turret. It took 90 men to man one turret. So now you got 2 turrets, so that's 180 men, so that's where we get into the 240-some men and officers. Plus they had the 16 Marines that they assigned to us for anti-aircraft defense to man our 50 caliber machine guns. But we were the artillerymen. What we needed was somebody to man 50 caliber machine guns for anti-aircraft. We were the experts with the 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, with the 3-inch rapid-fire sea defense gun, with the 4 6-inch cannon, and the 4 14-inch defense sea defense cannon. At 9 o'clock, they tell us, we have just received news that the Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor. However, we will not fire on unless we are fired upon. Repeat, do not fire on unless you are fired upon, which was an unusual order. We wanted to make sure, they knew that this was happening, but they weren't quite sure. So in the event that it wasn't happening, for some reason that a Jap plane did come flying by, had no business there, and we fired on it, or a Jap ship or something. And that's a different story. But in the meantime, when we first went on alert, our Navy had got out and set minefields all out into the ocean and the bay all around us. So we were pretty safe that way. And then the next thing we know, 11 o'clock that morning, we received news that the Japanese bombers had flew over and bombed Clark Field and caught all our planes on the ground and just wiped them out. And then threw bits in here and everybody I talked to, our bombers were there, were loaded with bombs, waiting to take off to fly to Formosa and bomb it. But for some unknown reason, they never got the orders from MacArthur or the head of the Air Force to do that. Then I heard excuses, piss poor excuses, that they didn't have no reconnaissance missions. Yet we knew the goddamn Japs were flying over us and taking pictures all the time before the war started. So, I mean, it was kind of piss poor there. I didn't buy that. And that's how the war started. And our mission was to keep Manila Bay free, denied access to the enemy. And we did that up until the last day.
What did you eat at that time?
Well, we had the
To
food.
the end.
We had food for 6 months to hold us, supplies. And the supplies were transferred to Bataan equally. But they did make allowances for all the civilians that were going to be coming into Bataan. And this is what ate up all the supplies. When they retreated into Bataan, they left so much stuff in Manila it was pitiful. The English, British Petroleum, had oil in their tanks in Manila that they wouldn't blow up and burn. They would rather give it to the Japanese when it was declared an open city. And well, anyhow, this particular mission was part of it. We walked in and blew up the goddamn oil fields. And nobody knows where it came from. So, it's time they found out. Piss on you, you bastards. Give them out oil to fight us guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I told you I was a West Pointer, but I never went to West Point. I was a real gung-ho son of a bitch in them days. I still am, as a matter of fact. Okay, where were we? Yeah. Then the Japs came and took us from Wawa back to Corregidor. And they wouldn't let us mix with the other troops coming off of Corregidor. They stuck us way up in a hellhole in front of the ship and put these guys from Corregidor and all that stuff down in the hole with us. And then they took us into Manila, unloaded us at Manila, and we started marching through Manila. And they were showing us off to Manila, you know, about here's your Americans, and you look at them this way, that way. And I forgot that every town that we marched in, we was over at Wawa. The Filipinos and all were throwing bananas at us, fruit, peanuts, anything they could to give us something to eat. Because they could see that we needed it, you know. And many a Filipino woman, I seen these Japs come up and slap them in the ass with the rifle butt, give them a kick in the butt. I mean, really treating them brutal. And the kids, just because they threw a banana or a handful of peanuts or some peanut chews. And the same thing in Manila. They try to come out and give you a drink of water like that, and then the Japs would beat them to the ground. And the Filipinos had no love for the Japs. Then they put us on into Bilibid prison and stayed there overnight. And from there they packed us in the trains. They put us in there just as many as could get in the train standing up. Now here's a bunch of guys in the train standing up. Everybody got dysentery. No place to take a crap. No bucket. No nothing. And I mean, you did it. And that's all there was to it. It's sick. And if you fell down, the guys just stamped and walked all over you. Then we got to Cabana Tawan. And that's where you heard a little earlier about, that's where they killed the next 4 guys. They shot him at the stake saying he was going to escape. And I stayed there for, I guess it was 2 months, maybe a little less or a little more. And they asked us what we were doing.
what our job was. And I said, a linesman. Now, a linesman in the Army means a guy that goes string telephone lines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a mediocre, I'm not going to tell my chief plotter what I know about plotting and all that. There's none of their damn business. I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to give my name, rank, and serial number.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I did. And I bullshitted. Now, they got the wrong conception. When I said linesman, they thought I was a radioman. I guess in their interpretation. So they took 100 sailors, 100 and Air Force men, and some, I forgot how many Marines that were radiomen. And they took us, we were the first group to leave Cabanatuan to go to Japan. And they separated us from everybody else, took us out in this field, and they had us spread out 5 yards between every guy. And then they come down and question us. And they had this code book and handed it to us and asking us, can we read it? And we all had the same answer. We don't know. You got to be an officer. You got to have the code book to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you don't know what you're doing. So they got pissed off when they got down to me. This little bandy-legged Jap walked up to me and took his bayonet out and slashed me and hit me in the throat with it. And I felt it cut me. And I seen the blood jump out, and then I passed out. Well, the little bastard must have knew what he was doing, because he scared the shit out of everybody, including me. Well, I come to, and I got a little tiny scar there. Not much of it is in there somewhere. You got to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I come to and looked at it and couldn't get no stitches, no nothing. Well, it stopped bleeding, and I was healthy out. I never got infected, so it was all right there. Then they took us and they put us on these hell ships to go to Formosa. We didn't know where we were going. And when we got on this ship, it was all Americans. And we took off and we're going. We didn't know where we were going. All we know was Formosa. Well, it's Taipei today, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us a while to get there. Down in that hole, they had us covered over with 2 by 12 planks, 16 foot long, that covers the top of the hatches, and a canvas over it, and a bucket. And the one we was in must have had horses or cattle or something. And there was all horse manure and straw down in there. And we're laying in there. I guess we was in there. Seemed like ages and ages. And I lost track of days and time. Sent one little bucket of water down a day for everybody to drink. Some of the guys that was closer to the exit, they got a little chance to get up top deck and get a fresh breath of air. But you were shitting everywhere you could shit. And I mean, you lay down, you're laying in it too. So finally we got to Formosa. They get us out there. No showers, no baths, no nothing all this time. The only thing we got at Cabanatuan, we had a couple rainstorms because the rainy season was coming in. And we would get under the eaves of the huts that we were living in, called them barracks. And we would kind of wash off that way. They had us working on a railroad with these yo-ho poles. We would fill these yo-ho poles up with stones and stuff, and we would carry it up the embankment and dump it. And it was kind of filled for a railroad bed. And these Japanese guards, they'd be standing there with their rifles, and they'd sit down, you know. They would look at us, and they would open the bolt of the rifle and take the shells out. Tell us, go ahead and run. Where the hell are you going to run to? Yeah. You told us you know us by our hair, you know us by our eyes, you know us by our color. And we sure in hell can't swim 8,000 miles, you know this. So where are you going to run? You're going to take the bullets out and you put it back in again. No, the hell wouldn't we just ignore them.
So they'd sort of taunt you.
Yeah. And they had peanuts growing out there in the field. And once in a while you'd run into a guy that was half decent. He'd let you go over there and get some of them peanuts. Cook some. And even though they weren't ripe, they were still good eating raw. I mean, you know, it was just something to eat besides what you were getting. Mm-hmm. And the only good part that I seen about it, all our stay in Formosa, we only had one guy dying. We stayed there 2 months, a little better than 2 months. And when he died, the Japanese commander, he walked up on the mountainside and he picked some flowers and he came down and he put it, we gave us wood, we built a box to put him in, and he put the flowers on the box. Well, the Japanese commander and one of our guys, a naval lieutenant commander or a lieutenant or something, I don't know who it was, had gone to college together back here in San Francisco.
No way.
So they knew one another there. And then they separated us from all of them guys. They kept breaking us apart all the time. And my unit was broke up immediately. Half of my unit, I don't even know where they went to. there was only 3 guys in the camp with me. It was in my unit, and one of us died, and 2 of us came back alive. So from there, they took us to Japan, and they had these glass rods, and then when we were going to Japan, and bend us over and stick it up our rear end to see if we had amoebic dysentery. And it was only a small thing, about the size of a straw. They just stuck it up there to get a smear, like, you know. The ones that had amoebic dysentery, they separated, and I think they were giving them some kind of injections, emetine or something like that. They want to bring the amoebic dysentery back to Japan. But they didn't care where else it stayed.
Right.
So when them guys got better, they joined up with us in that camp in Mitsubishi Shipyards in Yokohama. And that was a daily grind. It was work. And then the Japs would come in, and we'd get no news from nobody. And all of a sudden, they'd have a party or something. And there was a big battle going on somewhere. They'd get drunk up on sake and come in. And they had mixed us in with English and Dutch troops by that time. And we, Americans, were a minority in the camp as far as numbers go. And they would start, Americans are no good, Americans line up. And they'd line us up and beat the hell out of us, you know. Toxon fighting on such and such an island, this and that. Well, it was worth the beat to get the news. Then they come out with the idea, they said, who do you think is going to win the war? So when they asked me that, I looked right in the interpreter's eyes, and I says, America. He says, America? How's America going to win? We're just defeating you and defeating you and defeating. I says, we have everything. We have all the material. We have all the supplies. You have nothing. What do you got here? You've got a little island and nothing on it. You're surrounded. We're not surrounded. You're surrounded. He got mad and beat the balls off me.
He did.
So the next time he asked me, I just looked at him. I said, Japan. Ah, so, he said. Finally, he got transferred out. Last I seen of him, he must have got killed somewhere. I don't know.
Did you get along pretty well with the British and the Dutch?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had no problems getting along with them. The only thing was that they didn't live by the standards. We live by we're Americans, damn it, and we're going to be Americans. And the British live by the we're soldiers, and we're going to act like soldiers, and we're going to obey like soldiers. And I said, obey what? There's only one thing to obey. Obey the boys that are over there trying to get our asses out of here. That's what we obey. We don't obey these little sons of bitches. We do everything we can to screw them up. And working in the shipyards, we sabotaged every damn thing we could sabotage.
And what were the penalties if you got caught at that?
Oh, it was a death penalty if you got caught. But you learned how not to get caught because you had no excuses. It ain't like here in the States. You get caught murdering somebody, everybody got an excuse. My father treated me bad for some reason. You can't pull that shit over there. They didn't go for it. So, you think there's so much of this stuff, and it comes like little flashes at a time, you know. Oh yeah, they had us divided into different groups. Each group done something. Some were painters, some were scrapers, some were. They taught us how to tack weld, and I was one of the guys that taught how to tack weld. Like in the shipyard, you would tack weld the beam, and then they would come along and weld it and all that stuff. So it would take 3 Japs watching me do my job, which they could be doing by themselves, and it took them a long time to figure that out. Finally, when they figured that out, they fired us all. They put us into cleanup details and stuff. Our first ship we worked on, it was sort of a destroyer escort, I guess you would classify it as. They launched that son of a bitch and pulled it into the pier, and the next day we went out there and it was sunk at the pier. Seams had opened, wide open, and everything else. Oh, they was going to shoot us all and kill every one of us. But they lost faith. They couldn't say that we did it, you know. Sabotage, they said. But they couldn't prove that we did it. You had your Japanese people watching us. Well, we were putting crowbars in everything. I just smeared the top over, you know, like a little glue.
guys must have been pretty happy to see that. I mean, what a
Oh,
morale.
yeah, I'm telling you. That was a big feather in that.
Yeah.
But after that, I mean, any job that we had responsibility to, we got no more of that.
Really?
And then when we broke the damn Diligent cigarettes up that the English and all were getting, that was the thing that grabbed my balls. How the hell their officers let them do that?
Mm.
They were good. We got along good with them. We had outside of that, and we all the officers. We had what did we have? We had later on. We didn't have no officers with us. Later on, we got an officer that came off of some submarine. I forgot what submarine it was that they had sunk, and they picked up and brought him over. But all the rest was all English officers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they all knew. They knew that I was a troublemaker in that damn camp. Barniskis, Bartakoi, Ropiako, killed your son, Heiko! Come here, Barniskis, you son of a bitch.
They gave you a lot of beatings.
Oh, yeah. And they was giving us, in the beginning, a Japanese newspaper printed in English. And at this time, they were fighting down in the Solomon Islands. And this one story they had, Lieutenant Sukiyaki and Captain Moshi, whoever it was flying their plane down over the top of the Solomon Islands, and they were on an observation mission. And lo and behold, here comes these American airplanes. So the captain took the airplane and he went up and up and up and up and up, went up so far that his machine guns up, he couldn't shoot. So the Americans were coming closer and closer, and the American machine guns didn't freeze up. So he said to the lieutenant, he says, "You have them rice balls back there?" And the lieutenant says, "Yes, but they're frozen." He said, "Well, Lieutenant, you used to be a pitcher in baseball, didn't you?" And the lieutenant said, "Yeah." So he said to the lieutenant, "Try to take them and hit the propellers on the American plane and see what happens." He threw the first rice ball, and lo and behold, it hit the propeller on the American plane, and the American plane went down. And he took careful aim with the second rice ball. He threw it, and he hit the propeller on the second plane, and it went down. But in the meantime, the Americans were shooting at us, landing gear away. So now we get back to Rabaul, and how do we land? He says, the lieutenant says, "Don't worry, Captain, just keep flying. I'll kick a hole in the floor and run along with the plane and land it." And we did. And we started laughing. And we were making a big joke out of this. And the Jap interpreter heard us. And we got no more English newspapers after that.
They expect you to believe
Yeah,
that?
yeah. We got no more English newspapers after that.
They do a pretty good amount of interrogating over the 3 years that you were in captivity.
Not with us so much, because they had captured everything that we had. There was nothing we could really tell them. And even as far as the plotting equipment we had, I guess I couldn't tell them that, because that actually was almost like First World War stuff.
Yeah.
But still, it would give them information. And if they want to rebuild that plotting table, they would know where the data points were, and they could figure out what the azimuths and everything to it was, and that would give them direction plus the ranges and all, and it would make it a lot simpler. So none of that stuff they got.
What was a typical meal?
Yeah.
What was that in general?
We never really got rice. We got rice the first month or two, and once in a while you would get maybe a couple fish heads thrown into a pot and cooked up with some Chinese lettuce and Chinese cabbage. That's a broad, big leaf with a stem, and the leeks, the onion, Chinese onion. And you would get a coffee cup full of that for your breakfast, a coffee cup for your supper, and a coffee cup for lunch. And then the coffee cup would be filled up with this broth, whatever came off there. And then you would have a hot green tea, but no sugar. And that was it. And then maybe once every 2 weeks you might get a little hoagie roll, like a hoagie roll. And it's not the big ones we get, it's the smaller ones. Mm-hmm. And that would be your meal, plus a little bit of soup that they call it. And then after about 3 months of that, you got it was more like not a barley, but like a maize or something. Even their horses They didn't feed it to their horses, but we got it. The Japanese would look at it and go, "Gah!" So, I mean, but we were glad to get it.
Mm-hmm.
It was better than nothing.
Glad to get anything.
Yeah. And we didn't have too much trouble with our teeth. Now, well, maybe that was because we had nothing to chew on.
Right, that's true. Could you see and feel yourself losing weight, though, and strength?
Not really. You would lay down and try to sleep, and I would always get this feeling like my body was puffing up. And I don't know what it was, but to me it felt like I was blowing up and swelling up, but I was actually losing weight.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody around you was the same way, so you never really noticed it. Everybody was skinny and, and you'd see a guy that was 6 foot tall, 6'3", 6'4" tall. And when he was standing up there naked, you know how your butt sticks out this way? Well, it was like that. All you seen was the hip joints and the bones down the bottom. And everybody got sores on them from where the bones was rubbing right against the skin. If you had no mattresses, you're laying around on a wooden floor. Had a little straw mat, and that was all. And no beds. I see these guys in Germany and all, they all had bunks to sleep in. And we didn't have none of that stuff.
Is there anything you can't eat to this day?
No, I'm one of the lucky ones. When I came out, got back to the American lines, first thing they said, "What do you want to eat?" And I said, "Tomato juice." And the guy come and he gave me a glass of tomato juice. I downed it. Another one. He said, "How much do you want?" I said, "How big is that can?" He said, "1 gallon." I said, "Put it all here." I drank a whole damn gallon of tomato juice. I went on a tomato juice binge. Boy, I started putting the weight on and come back all right.
So there wasn't a problem with eating too much too soon?
No, not for me. Not for me.
Mm.
Only with meat. First time we got there, we were still in Japan after the war was over, and one of the guys got the fire axe. You know, the fire axe is a pointy axe and thing on the broad blade for cutting wood. We had taken over from the Japs. We had taken their weapons. The Jap guards were there, and like I mentioned earlier, all the beat-up artists were gone. Now, this Japs that were there, we didn't know. We had no malice against. It's strange. We had no malice against them. We had no malice against the Japanese people. The only ones we had malice against was the sons of bitches that was beating us up. We wanted our day in court so they can have their day in hell. It's the best way I can explain it. And I still feel this way today. I would gladly cut their throat or do anything to any one of the bastards that I found.
Just those specific guys?
Yeah, just those.
You guys?
That's right. That's the only ones I'm mad at. The rest of them I'm not mad at.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit down and drink a beer with them, bullshit with them, do anything else. But these guys had no call to be treating me the way they were treating me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe it's do unto others as you have others do them. And I always thought being a military man, this is what it meant. All right, in wartime it's open field. But once you got the guy under control and all, what do you pick on him for?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell advantage you get? You got the dog, he's going to be your pet, so what do? You treat him right. I mean, that's my attitude. I couldn't swim 8,000 miles. They could have got more out of me by treating me better.
Mm-hmm.
The harder they treated me, the madder I got. The madder I got, the more I resisted. And I just said, the hell with it. All right, it's a game we're playing, so I'll learn to live this game. I'm a survivor. I'm going to survive. How about you? And it worked out that
So
way.
you felt that way the whole way through? There was
yeah.
no time when you said...
No time. I lived for 6 months at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I fought these sons of bitches. I know how they could fight. I met the best of them. They didn't beat me. My country beat me. My country turned me down. My country didn't supply the military with the weapons that they were supposed to have when they needed them. And that's what they're doing today. And I say, wake up, don't let it happen.
You guys must have felt pretty cut off and isolated on the Philippines. 6
Yeah,
months
but-
you're fighting. I mean,
We were. And we made that, we're battling
Right,
bastards from
right.
the town up. And that was our fighting. That's what we did. Every time we got down in the dump or something, we said that again. And I say this to congressmen I meet, I say it to everybody, and I don't give a damn who he is. If he's a general in the army, I'll stand up there and tell him right to his face, too. God damn it, I deserve that right. I earned that right. You can't take it away from me. So, it's a great life and good to be alive.
Must have been, I mean, when you saw your first Americans and knew you were going to be free, that you were going to survive, I mean, the feeling of elation must have been amazing.
Well, and let me explain that a little bit now. After we disarmed the Japs, we took their weapons, and they told us, they said, here's a radio. You will receive orders from General Wainwright over the radio. Do not come to Tokyo. Do not come to Yokohama. Stay here until they can make room and plan to take care of you when you get there. Now, put a POW on a barracks and a roof. The American planes will fly over it and see where you are. They will come in and drop supplies. Well, sure enough, we put the POW up there, and in about 2 hours or so, a plane goes by, and about 2 more hours, here comes these Navy planes in the TBS, and they drop this little canister over the side, and it says, we're going to drop you duffel bags with parachutes on them. For Christ's sakes, don't try to catch them because they'll go right through the roof and kill you, which was good advice. I mean,
Yeah.
And when they did, sure enough, one of them hit the roof of the damn barracks, just a little wood barracks, and it went right through the roof, even with the parachute on it. So we stayed away from it. And that was with K rations and candy and chocolates and cigarettes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And after they made that drop, I guess it was a squadron leader, he come flying by, and we see this thing fly out of the plane. And it comes down and hits right in the prison courtyard. And it's a pair of shoes, and in it he wrote a note. He says, hey, out fellas, I see some of you are barefoot down here. He says, maybe these will fit somebody. You can have something to walk home in. I'm flying home barefoot.
You guys must have appreciated that.
Yeah. So then they come by with the B-29s, and they were dropping these big platforms. I guess they were as big as this room, with a parachute in each corner. Mm-hmm. And 50-gallon drums welded back to back, hollowed out, welded, and stuffed with all his food and stuff. Mm. And they would come down. I think there was four twin 50-gallon drums on it. And my buddy, he was a radioman, and he was in the Air Force. He wasn't in my unit. And we got buddies in prison camp. Mm-hmm. Cy Serrata from New York. And he made up a blinker light. He was blinking a message to him. Good morning, fellas, how you doing? And one of these things come down, and the third parachute didn't open on it. I mean, the fourth parachute didn't open on it. And the goddamn thing came down and smashed him right into the roof and killed him. Nah. The first day, and he never even got to have a damn decent meal. Boy, I carried that in my mind for years and years and years. Even now, I'm starting to clog up on it. The irony of the whole damn thing.
Survive all of that.
All of that, yeah. And that's what the head shrink at the VA said to me. How come you can get by with all of this stuff? I said, how the hell do I know? It's just something that everybody's got a weak point.
Yeah.
That's right. Sigh. God rest your soul.
By the end of the war, you had a good idea the U.S. was winning.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a matter of time. We had a bombing raid. I'm trying to think. Before the B-29s come in, we had a bombing raid off of some carrier planes, and it was in February sometime. And it was a snowstorm, it was snowing. And they come in flying so damn low from our prison camp. We were out in the yard when the sirens went. We looked out, we see these American planes going by. And we didn't even recognize the style of planes because the planes had changed. We were P-40, you know what I mean? Yeah.
P-planes. And you could see the outline of the pilot sitting in the plane. It was so close and so low. And then it wasn't too long after that, and sirens went. It was a nice sunny winter day, cold but sunny. And we're all looking around. We look up in the sky, and there's this monster. I'd never seen a plane that big in my life. He looked like he would make three B-17s. Oh, he was a monster. Mm-hmm. And he's going by there, and these streaks are coming out the back, you know.
and you couldn't hear the engines. The Jap planes were down there trying to get up. They couldn't get up to that altitude. You'd see them fall off and come down. Their artillery was bursting way short of where he was. And it wasn't long after that when they came in bombing real good.
Or B-29s, you said?
Yeah. But what, I looked up, I said, what the hell are they? I looked up at the Jap standing there, I said, Nunda. He said, B-Nijuku, B-29. I said, huh? Nunda? B-Nijuku. I said, B-17. No, B-Nijuku. B-29.
Must have been a good feeling.
Yeah. Oh, boy, I was all diddly inside, everything else. Yee. I mean, we knew that the end was coming.
Yeah.
It was the only news we'd get if they'd bring in some new prisoner somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the Attu and Kiska, when they were taken, we didn't know that until them guys, they put, I think it was 2 or 3 of them in our camp. They told us about that, Attu and Kiska.
So each way you learned a little bit
Yeah.
as time went on with new prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
You think the Japanese got nicer toward the end because they knew the end was
No,
coming?
no. Well, no change in them at all.
Really?
No change. They had them beat up artists out there all the time, and they were the hardcore, and that was it. But they'd come in and I learned a Japanese song. I'm going to sing it for you. I don't know what the hell it means, but I sang it because it made the son of a bitches happy, and they would give me a rice bowl. Miyato kaya no sorakate gyokujutsu takaku kagyakaba tenshi no seiki haigaratsato kibodoru oyashima ose no asagumoni. So beautiful Fuji no so kataka so kino no watsu yurui magi wagani pano aso rina re. And they would stand up and clap like sons of bitches and come over and give me a rice ball. And sometimes I'd even get a few little candies. And I don't know what the hell the words were, but it worked when I needed it.
How'd you find out about it? See someone else do
I had
it?
to learn, yeah. One of the Englishmen was singing it, so I learned how to sing it too. I said, it's paying off for that son of a bitch, it'll pay off for me.
Was there any problem adjusting when you came home after the war?
No, I came home and went from the Philippines. We went back to San Francisco, Letterman General, stayed there a couple of days, put us on a hospital train. We went across country to Oglethorpe, Georgia. We stayed there for a couple more days, and I got a 90-day temporary duty at home. I came home. The next day, I went with my brother and worked down alongshore. I had all that back pay and all that stuff coming to me and everything, and I just, and that was November the 2nd. I remember that because I love hunting, and November the 1st, I was riding from Indiantown Gap in a staff car. Whack was driving me from Indiantown Gap to my house in Philadelphia. And we stopped to get some lunch, and a couple guys were hunting. One of them had shot a cocked pheasant, and she admired the tail feathers on it. So I asked the guy, I said, are you going to keep the feathers or anything? He said, no. I said, the lady here would like to have a couple of you. He said, sure, and he went and pulled them out. I give them to me, and I give them to her. So. Then I stayed and put my 90 days at home. I went back to Fort. Where the hell did I go back to? Indiantown Gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I got discharged the following day.
And have you experienced health problems in the interviewing years because of captivity?
Yes and no. I've had problems like a lot of guys do, but mostly throwbacks. And stuff. Get up and at night you can't sleep and walk the floor and this and that. Well, it did affect my life. I mean, my first life. I married, and But the survivor, I never collected a penny of the 5220. That was a club that they called, I don't know if you're familiar with it. You got $20 a week for 52 weeks if you was in the service during the Second World War. And I never collected any of that. I did do a little, I took some welding, I took a short welding course up on the GI Bill, and that paid off. And outside that, I never collected a penny of unemployment in my life. And I don't owe no son of a bitch a penny. I'm not a millionaire, you know, but all my bills are paid and I don't owe anybody any money.
It's much more than that.
Yeah.
But,
2 kids, I raised 2 kids with a divorce and got my second wife now for 25 years. She's put up with me, and I just say, honey, I'm nuts. I know I'm nuts. The VA tells me I'm 40% nuts, but it's good because I know it. Once I know it, I know how to handle it. See, I talk about it a lot. And in our POW, in our group, South Jersey group, number 2 here, them guys, I went in with them, they're from all European theater and Pacific theater and Korean War, whatever war you in. And when we get to them, I just bust them balls right off them. Don't feel sorry for yourself, you son of a bitch. You didn't go through no more than I did. Now, come on, talk about it. Get up here and talk about it. Spit that demon out of your soul. Get it out of there. Talk it out. Get rid of it. Let it know you're not afraid of it. That's the way you control it. Of course, if you keep it in, happens if that's who's going to eat you up. Going to eat you.
You got to confront the full experience.
And we started a group that we go to high schools and we talk at high schools once a year and whatnot. You know, 4 or 5 of us get together and talk about it.
Good idea.
And they, these guys are opening up now like they're clams. And their wives, their home lives, everything has turned beautiful for them.
That's great.
But trying to keep it in there, and well, the first thing I said, listen, you're not a yellow-bellied son of a bitch. You've done your job. You've done everything you were supposed to do. Even God couldn't help you no more than He did, you know. He did everything possible without interfering in your way of life. And now you've got to help.